So, it's been a minute since I've been out here. Tons have changed. I've become a dad. That's probably the biggest change, taking up all of my free time. But I have been able to get out here and do a few things. Most of it's shop organization to prep for doing projects this year, and hopefully allow me to record videos on a little bit more frequent basis. This project, which is going to be a new desk for me to work from. Current desk is a sheet of Baltic birch. Honestly, there's just no organization, so it feels cluttered, and I put stuff down and I leave it there, and I want to change that this year. The first project is going to be a new desk. I'm going to split this project up into 3 pieces to make it more manageable. I'll start with the desktop, then I'm going to move on to the legs, and then I'll create a cabinet that's going to house my computer and camera equipment. When I created this design, I was thinking of just doing some plain legs, using a simple rectangle shape for the desktop, and then going pretty crazy with the cabinet. But my design process tends to evolve a lot as I'm building and when I get my hands on the materials, and that's definitely the case here. I found a great deal on a pre-glued slab on Marketplace. The moment I had the slab in my hands, I decided I want to make the desktop a little more visually interesting. So I went through several iterations in my head, starting with the almost trapezoid shape, which I liked but didn't love, ending with the partly rounded rectangle. I love this shape, but it terrified me because I've never really attempted to create any kind of radiuses, or is that radii, in wood before. With the shape settled, the only other major consideration for me was a clever, visually clean way to organize my cables. And with all that information, let's get back to the build. I already started marking out this plywood for the cabinet. There's going to be a few special features, but this is going to take a back burner for a second. I'm going to put this away. This is the walnut desktop. Inside to the side. Do too much scratching on the back. Okay, this definitely has a face. This is the face we're going to use for the top, bottom. Turns out I was wrong on this, and the width of the board is only 33 inches, which is fine. 33 and 3/8 actually, which is fine. I can work with that. I only need it to be 29 because once I add that skirt on the front, and actually I'm going to put a skirt on the back too, so maybe 28 inches. I'll rip it out of 28 inches. We'll get the skirts added on. The main problem is don't really have enough room to put this through my table saw to rip it to width, so I'm going to have to bust out the track saw and do it that way. Okay, as I was saying earlier, almost all of my designs are led or influenced by materials that I have on hand or are easily available near me. And in this case, I found this huge slab. It was 12 feet long, and I thought it was 4 feet wide, but turns out I was wrong there. That's fine, it will still work. It was on Marketplace for $420, and even without doing the calculations, I know I saved money just because the guy had surfaced it already and sanded it to 80 grit. After seeing the slab, I felt the desktop might be a little bit too thin. I feared it may sag given the fact that my computer monitor is massive and I tend to cover my desk in random electronics, which are not always lightweight. So I thought one of the things I could do was give it a little extra thickness. I decided to use offcuts from the panel itself to add a skirt down the front and back, and that will add extra depth and thickness, or at least visual thickness to the desk, and this will help support it from sagging. Then I'll use an offcut from the ends and add that underneath so that I have what looks like a 2.5 inch thick desk, but in reality the majority of it's only going to be 1.25 inch thick. I do plan to add a couple of metal braces underneath to help support it, although I'm not certain it's necessary. But there's a local shop where I got 2 pieces of rectangular shaped steel that will help support it for $26, so I figured why not. And here I am using some hand tools, probably incorrectly, but you know, you gotta start somewhere, right? Although I'm pretty sure I'm using the plane correctly here. So you probably can't see this on camera, but there's a few little gouges in this top that I'm going to have to think about how to fix. They're just at this one end, which is a little disappointing. I plan on putting a radius, so I could radius this corner here, and that might get rid of some of them. But then that would leave me with this rather large knot to deal with, which I guess I could deal with. It shouldn't be a problem, but I plan on doing the radius on that corner to get rid of that knot. But there's still some here a little bit further down that doing the radius would not help with. So I may just try and iron with a damp cloth on these to see what happens. If not, maybe they can, some of these lighter ones could potentially be sanded out or planed out. I know I could get a cheap desk from IKEA. I could get one of those butcher block countertops, or I could have kept the desk that I had before, the plywood, but you know, I work at a desk all day long for my day job, and I do woodworking on the weekends, so I may as well build something that I'm comfortable sitting in front of, and that I like. That being said, let's just have a quick breakdown of current materials. At this point, I'd spent $420 on this slab. That doesn't include the gas to go pick it up. It was an hour away. The slab covered the materials for the desktop and will also provide some of the materials for the legs, as I have an idea with the design of that already. The other things that I did have to go and buy for this project were a couple of router bits. I could have gotten them from Amazon, but there's a sale at the local Woodcraft store because it's closing, and I think I got 2 Whiteside router bits for a little under $60. I'm pretty pleased with that. So I'm at $480 in materials and supplies so far. So creating this radius on the corner of the desk had become this huge mountain in my head, and as with most things, it was in my head, because once I got started, it was fairly simple. There's so many resources out there, be it YouTube, forums, Reddit, wherever you get your woodworking knowledge from, and many, many, many people have done this before, so just copy what they've done. There's no need to reinvent the wheel here. One thing I will say is, if you think you are taking a small cut, make it even smaller, because this is a huge cut for a tiny little trim router. So I must have been taking 30 seconds each time. Probably took about 35 swipes with the router to get through this. Then followed up with a jigsaw, then a handsaw, but honestly, it doesn't really matter how you do it as long as you get the result that you want in the end, and that's one of the things I love. There's a million different ways to do this. You just got to use whatever tools you have at your disposal, and you'll figure out how to get the result that you want. So my router bit in here is not quite long enough with the top bearing, and I guess when I bought it I didn't realize it has this little knuckle thing that you can see here, this bit here, so I can't use it as a flush trim bit with just the top bearing because this touches. So I either need to go and order a longer flush trim bit. This is 1 1/4. They do come up to like 2-inch cutting length. I can either order that probably off Amazon, or I can flip the bench top over. So I guess I'll be flipping this desktop over and going from there. Then after that, I'm going to slap a 3/4 inch. Let me get it. Put this 3/4 inch bit in, and we will do a nice 3/4 inch round over the whole way around, keeping the other 3 corners square. So it should be nice and smooth. Hopefully nobody cuts themselves on the sharp corners like I did. Like I did here. Apologies for that. It appears that I have no manners anymore. Obviously, I've not mentioned this yet, but I trimmed my beard since the beginning of the video. I saw myself on camera and realized that I was starting to look somewhere between Sasquatch and a mountain man, destined to never have contact with other human beings ever again. And although that sounds delightful, it isn't going to work. So I decided to give it a little trim and make myself a little more presentable. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Most of my time spent woodworking is spent thinking about problem solving, and sometimes that's solving a problem in the design or figuring out how to do a joint with the tools that I've got and what my skill level will be able to handle. And other times it's figuring out how to repair a screw up that I did by accident with the router when I was trying to cut the radius, which I'm about to do. I didn't catch the screw up on camera, but you'll be able to see the repair. I screwed up earlier and gouged here with the router, so I decided to trim this little piece out, make a little block. I'm going to glue this back in here, sand it down level, and it should kind of disappear. Or at least that's the plan. It's not totally tight on the edge here, but that's fine because I'm going to put a 3/4 of an inch, maybe even an inch round over there. So that edge will all get cleaned up, but as you can see, disappeared pretty well. I think some of the most important skills to have as a woodworker are pretty relevant to normal life, but number one is problem solving. There's always going to be a problem. Problem with your material, a problem with your tools, a problem with your space. You don't have enough space, you don't have the right tool, you don't have the perfect material. There's always going to be something against you. And what I think makes a great woodworker is their ability to overcome these hurdles and find creative ways around issues. That's something I'm definitely still learning, and I have a very long way to go, but I'm trying to enjoy the challenge. And the second skill is just straight perseverance. Projects never go as quickly or as smoothly as you anticipate, or at least for me they don't, and that's just something I have to come to terms with. And given my general impatient disposition, it's something I really need to work on. I am going to take the desktop and slide it on over there. I'm going to lay it on top. This will allow me to finish up the top of the desktop. One thing I didn't mention is I don't recommend gloves for woodworking at all, except when it comes to moving shit across the room, because there's some sharp corners on here. Already cut my finger, so gloves. Valuable advice all round there. No glove, no love. But I figured I'd try steaming out some of these dents, so I bought this beauty, and she's a beauty. I'm not going to use it for anything other than heat. I guess I got to put it on a medium setting. It says use cloth, but I'm going to get some of this Scotch paper, nice and wet, put it on top. We're going to try steaming some of the things out. This bad boy cost me $13.99 from the Bullseye Boutique, otherwise known as Target, and yeah, I have no idea if this is going to work. If not, I need to come up with another plan because some of the gouges are pretty hefty. Here it is. This is the offending piece right here that you can see. All right, so it says to spray this. All right. Try this. So I think these are damaged in transport over here, but I'm not sure, to be honest. This is kind of crazy though. I did not expect it to work anywhere near as well as it has. Basically, I've removed these marks over here. And now I feel pretty confident that if there's any other marks, I can just steam them out. So, like I said earlier, part of my requirements for this build were cable management. My old desk, the sheet of plywood, had no cable management. I have wanted to do it in the past, but it's always seemed like a problem for another day. So I guess that other day is today then. Pretty sure the saying, cluttered desk, cluttered mind, was first said by Confucius, or was it Michelangelo? Plato? No? Okay then. I'm honestly not sure if it actually holds any truth, but I'm going to say that it does, and I'm hoping that having storage and organization can help me with my workflow. I'll let you know if that happens, but so far, as I'm making this video, it appears to be helping. I think I saw this design somewhere on either Google or Pinterest or one of those sites. I saw it, did not save it, and then couldn't find it again. Classic. So I know I didn't invent this. I mean, there's literally 10,000 different iterations of this specific type of cable management out there. Look at me using the vacuum. I'm telling you, I'm getting better at dust collection, or at least maybe kind of cleaning up as I go. Okay, maybe not better, but you can't get good dust collection with a router. This for me, however, just met all of my goals in the simplest, cleanest manner and was the easiest for me to execute with the tools at my disposal. Funny thing, when I first started, I wasn't a big fan of the router. I had never used one that I remember, and it didn't seem to share any attributes with the tools that I had used before. I mean, the high-pitched noise that it makes just puts me on edge. Now, however, it's probably one of the most, if not the most used tools in the shop. I tend to find some tools super intimidating, so I'll put off using them, and then once I've used them, I can't believe it took me so long to get around to using them. This is definitely how I feel about the router. Next up is the Mansaw. For some reason I'm having a hard time getting myself to use it, probably because I don't really understand how best to use it, or maybe I'm not doing things that need it at the moment, who knows. One of the shop organization projects that I mentioned earlier was to move all of the clamps off the wall and put them on this clamp rack. The idea was that I have limited space in the garage and I wanted some extra floor space to move around. So I created this rack, slapped on some oversized wheels, and I can wheel it out and put it behind my truck when I need a little bit of extra working space. I mentioned these supports earlier, and I don't think this is necessary, but I just wanted to cover all my bases and make sure that, heaven forbid I do put a lot of weight on it, it doesn't start sagging, especially considering it's such a nice piece of wood. And let's be honest, nobody wants droopy wood. I'm using Rubio Monocoat here as the finish simply because I had a fairly large amount left over from previous projects. Plus, this is going on YouTube, and it's almost like it's part of the official YouTube woodworker uniform at this point. So the bottom is finished. It's a little bit rough, but I'm totally fine with that because it's the bottom of the desk. And there you can see my thin metal supports that are just basically belt and suspenders, just adding a little extra support just in case it does want to sag. If we just take a quick look at my old desk setup here, as you can see, just a plank of plywood with a couple of aluminum struts underneath, or aluminium for you folks on the other side of the pond. The aluminum struts were definitely not strong enough for the thickness of the desktop, and they were definitely sagging. And as you can see, I didn't put any finish on it. The ends were exposed. It's just a mess, and this needed to go. It was time for a change. Okay, let's just talk about the rest of the build real quick. Next up, I'm going to build the legs, and I've decided to do the legs with some shelves to add a little extra storage using some of the offcut pieces from the desktop. I'll share my leg design next video, as to be quite honest, it's still going through iterations in my head. I want to obviously push my skills and try something new, but I don't want to bite off more than I can chew, so to speak. Anyway, I'm looking forward to building and sharing the rest of this desk with you. Until next time, peace.